Okay. Hello, everyone. Absolute Spirit here. Today we are talking about. What are we talking about?
Some sort of philosophy of art, aesthetics. This is
Yes.
something that I think is deeply interested Alice more than me in terms of like time. But ever since I took um, two classes during my last semester as an undergraduate here at Drew University, which is where we are, we're back in our radio station recording, so that's really cool.
Shout WMNJ.
But yeah, in the spring 2024, I took a philosophy course called Aesthetics with Professor Eric Anderson, which is fantastic. And I used a book today. I'll use it today too. We're busting it out. Zizek Less Than Nothing. Love this book. I get so much of my philosophical insight from this. My reading of Hegel from this. It's super helpful. Super, I think, convincing. Super interesting. So recommend that. So I used this in a paper I wrote for aesthetics, and I also used a little bit in another course I took called Marx, Nietzsche, Freud. That was one of the titles. Another title was, I think, what was modernity. So it's kind of just going over modernity, what it was in terms of not just philosophy, but of art, of architecture, of literature and poetry. And that was an English class in the English department with Dr. Jacob Soul, who we actually interviewed for our very far in the future documentary on modern philosophy. So anyway,
Yeah, which
without
is actually how Absolute Spirit got started. Fun fact.
it is,
The
so I just
documentary on
figured
modern
I'd
philosophy
start with a little
concept.
contextualization.
Yes.
Yeah, for today and what we'll be doing. So I'm going to be referencing this to talk about, at least on my end, a very psychoanalytically informed philosophy of art and aesthetics, so to speak. At least how we might use it today. Alice, do you want to explain some thoughts you're having on art?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm an artist. I'm a musician. I'm an
She's
art
the actual art
major.
major. I'm just
Yes.
philosophy. I'm like thinking
Um.
about it. She's doing it. Well, I make music,
Yeah.
but anyway, she's the art major here. So.
Yes. So I think my kind of like approach to this video will be more experiential as always. That's how I approach
Going back to our
philosophy
first
generally.
dialogue, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I'll be talking about kind of like making art, what I think about when I'm making art, like what I'm why I'm making it, what I'm making. Maybe I'll put some art on screen. Yeah.
That would be cool. Boom, boom, boom. I don't know where we're gonna put it. Do you want to get started? Do you want me to talk first?
Sure, I can go first.
Thank you.
So generally thinking about philosophy of art, yeah, I'll just talk about my process. For me, or like my whys. So for me, there's a few reasons that I make art. One is like just straight self-expression, like learning about myself, kind of discovering myself. I think like when I was a bit younger, maybe like 2 years ago when I was a sophomore in college, I was going through some really dark stuff, and I turned to drawing as kind of a refuge, and I would just like draw in my notebook a lot. And I noticed that it really helped me understand myself, to like see what was going on in my head on the page, and like, oh wow, that's kind of horrific. Like realizing that, like realizing what was going on in my head was kind of horrific, and then like being able to look at it, and like, yeah, it's a really self-reflective thing for me in a lot of ways, and a way to learn about myself and grow from what I learn. And it still is that for me. It's a lot less dark these days. Sometimes I have dark like art, but it's much more like just, yeah, figuring out what's going on, learning like self-love and those sorts of things. So that's kind of one method of art making that I have, or one avenue, I guess is maybe a better word. Um, and then the other like reason that I make art is for the collective. So, kind of like this, right? Like what I'm doing right now, like this is more for the collective than for myself. This is more like, well, I want to put something out in the world. I want to share what I have that's valuable. I want to share my experience in a way that can be valuable for other people. And through in more like traditional art, I do that through like documentary, and also just making work. I'm really interested in figuring out how to make work that makes people feel what's going on, right? So like the earth is on fire, like, the climate's a disaster, like genocide is happening. And I think, I mean, I know, at least for myself, that I can tune into that. I can tune into what's going on in the world, with the planet, with people, with the conscious collective. Um, and I want to make art that makes other people tune into that, whether like and be uncomfortable, right? Because it's really uncomfortable to like feel what's going on in the world. And so I think that art has the power to help us feel our grief, and ultimately help us heal. And that those are two really big themes of my work that's more for the collective, are grief and healing. Um, yeah. So that's my little intro about like my approach to art making philosophically.
Cool. Thank you. Guess it's my turn now.
Yes.
I suppose you could say a lot of things about this, but that's one of the reasons I have the text. So I think I'm just going to go to that and open up with a reading and then kind of talk about it. That should get the thoughts flowing and the coherency being coherent. So let's get into some Zizek, Less Than Nothing. This is on page 388. Even when a painting depicts natural objects, it is always about spirit, the material appearing of spirit. There is, however, a privileged organ of the human body in which spirit reverberates most directly. The eye is the window into the human soul, as the object which, when we look into it, confronts us with the abyss of the person's inner life. The conclusion from these two premises, there was one earlier, but don't worry about that, is that insofar as art creates natural objects which are ensouled, insofar as, in a painting, all objects become suffused with human meaning, it is as if the artistic treatment transforms every visible surface into an eye, so that, when we look at a painting, we look at a thousand-eyed Argus. The artwork thus becomes a monstrosity, a multiplicity of eyes staring at us from all sides. Hence one can say that artistic beauty is, as Lacan put it in his Seminar 11, precisely an attempt to cultivate, to tame, this traumatic dimension of the other's gaze, to put the gaze to rest. So here we have a really interesting philosophy of art. He invokes Hegel, right, who I talked a little about his philosophy of art last time, that kind of encapsulates both the, at least good art, right, the highest art for Hegel, which was encapsulated in the Dutch painting of his time, and he lived in like the early to mid 1800s. He thought that kind of art encapsulated both the particular, passing, like finite of the everyday, as well as the infinite, the highest, most super sensible ideas, the eternal, God, things like this. And he thought Dutch art mashed those two things together, because really, when the universal spirit, God, is encapsulated into reality, he thought that really presented itself materially, the idea actualized in his language, in a community, in that was subsumed by such universal. So for him, that would be something like religion. So kind of like depicting a religious community, like in, at least, for the time, that's really how spirit was encapsulated at his time in his view. So that's kind of his view of art and why he thinks it's so encapsulated by human meaning, because there's this kind of universal, this meaning that gets implicitly like kind of shoved into the particularity, the contingent, the meaningless of the everyday. So that's kind of like Hegel's default thing. And then Zizek, in this book, as he always does, he puts a Lacanian twist on it, which makes it really interesting. And he turns this into kind of a terrifying notion, because really what's happening here is that if humanity is really encapsulated in this art, then all of us is that kind of gaze. And I'm new to psychoanalysis, so like I'm sure someone could explain the gaze and these other concepts a lot better. But really what I think the point Zizek is trying to make here is that art is kind of something that, like, with all of our looking and all of our unconscious and all of our kind of repressed fear and all of our judgment and recognition and misrecognition, all of this is put into art. So yes, it's important to like recognize spirit is an art, but really what that isn't this kind of final full recognition, happy totality. It's all of this other kind of, maybe what, like Freudian kind of id stuff, all these drives, all this violence, all this hurt. And so really what I think is important to realize about art is that it can help us like encapsulate it. And he puts it nicely at the end of this paragraph. Artistic beauty, as Lacan put it in his seminar 11, precisely attempt to cultivate, to tame this traumatic dimension in the other's gaze, to put the gaze to rest. So maybe when we like make art, we can recognize these aspects of ourselves and kind of almost through a sort of catharsis, really like acknowledge it and put it to rest in a way. It's much better to, I think, express yourself through art. This is almost like an Aristotelian like argument, right, against Plato's anti-art. Like, no, art is just going to embody the bad, and it's going to, but really the bad is kind of like the supersensible, at least in the Lacanian Hegelian view, right? Because it's all spirit, and spirit encapsulates the whole of humanity and all of what we are, including our unconscious and our drives and our violence and our hurt, as well as, all the good things as well, traditionally conceived good things. So I think art is this really good way to kind of see ourselves and what we are. As Zizek says here, the window of the human soul, which I think he's taken that from Hegel, and really kind of like recognize it and have an outlet for it, as opposed to just like letting it sit within us and maybe come out in more monstrous ways, right? Traumatic ways. So, and that might have a little bit to do with what you were saying about recognizing yourself.
I would love to
do you want to? Yeah, please do. I've been talking for a bit, but there you go.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, there's a few things there.
Yeah.
One is, like, the immediate, like, my own personal experience with art making, like, that's very much what it was for me. And, I mean, I wasn't thinking of it in exactly those words and that phrasing,
right.
But I was thinking, like, well, I don't know if I was thinking at all. I was just kind of doing and making at the time. But, like, when I was making art, I was drawing these really, like, hideous, freakish, at least when I started, like, hideous and freakish kind of, like, depictions of myself and of what I was seeing in my head, of what was going on, of what I was feeling. And I was able to, like you're saying, like see the kind of like trauma that existed within me as like a physical thing. And I could then like understand it better and heal from it better. There's also a Terence McKenna line of thought that is, so he's talking about his sort of mission, his message for artists, and one of the things he says is that the purpose of art is to heal the human soul, and any artist like not doing that is not like living up to the full expectation, which I disagree with personally. I think Terence takes it a little too far in that particular talk, that saying that like the only value of art is to heal the human soul. I think art certainly can heal the human soul. It's one method of healing the human soul, and that's one of its functions in our current context. But to me, it implies a level of like, well, once the soul is healed, then we don't need to make art anymore. And I don't like that because I think art can always be there. And also we don't need to be making art to heal all the time. Like you can make something that's kind of like just like pretty to look at and enjoyable, and it can be like just as like valuable as something that has a more deep philosophical meaning. And that's something that I think about in my approach to art as well, is like sometimes I just want to make things that look nice, sometimes I just want to make things that look like pretty or nice or whatever. And
certainly. I want to comment on something you said that really stood out. Sorry, I've been like flipping through pages. You were talking. I was listening, and maybe this is going a little off topic from directly art, but it's certainly related to like why we should never stop making art. And maybe some support for McKenna as well. Maybe it's kind of like some sort of like middle ground or like between your views. Because
I'm not totally opposed to what he's saying there. Like I agree with him. I just think it's too narrow.
Yeah, I mean, I like how it said. It reminds me, well, first of all, like the end of the paragraph that I read about, like kind of this taming this trauma of to putting this gaze to rest.
Exactly. That's why it seems so similar.
But also you invoke this idea of like, maybe not, because maybe when it's healed, then we shouldn't do art anymore. But kind of a really important, I think, at least Zizekian notion is that like this, what you would refer to like the soul of ours, is actually like never healed. And I think he actually anticipates maybe this kind of thing, because in the very next paragraph he opens up with And is not what Hegel calls absolute knowing the endpoint of these reversals when the subject stumbles upon a final limitation, the limitation as such, which can no longer be inverted into a productive self-assertion? Absolute knowing thus does not mean knowing everything. It means recognizing one's limitations. Absolute knowing is the final recognition of a limitation which is absolute in the sense that it is not determinate or particular, not a relative limit or obstacle to our knowledge that we can clearly see and locate as such. I think the kind of point of that paragraph is to show that, because for Hegel, absolute spirit is and absolute knowledge is certainly present in art, but really what that absolute knowledge isn't really what we would call maybe a completion of like the soul or a complete healing of the soul. Rather, it's an acknowledgement of the limitations of our soul, the fact that we're kind of never healed, the fact that we're always kind of incomplete. Like, in other words, for the sake of this conversation, like aesthetically or artistically put, we're never going to have a reason to stop painting. We never truly realize I like what he said at the end here. There is no longer any shape of the in itself available as a measure of the truth for us. Put in terms of this conversation, we're never going to have that healing, that in itself, that kind of full, complete soul as the measure by which we should keep painting. Rather, the painting is itself kind of becomes the like activity of spirit, and it kind of, there's kind of like a openness to it. There's kind of like a, you can paint to paint, you can paint to do that, and in that kind of way, we're kind of always, because he says here by definition we're always included within spirit. The field by which we're measuring it is really ourselves. There's always an aspect of ourselves in art, and there's not really an external measurement by which to measure are we healed through this art. It stops being a medium and becomes the healing becomes like the activity. So we're not really healing from something. We're kind of just being like eternally healed by doing. That's like my reading of this in conversation.
Yeah.
And
So
hopefully that was helpful.
I have two
That was a little
thoughts.
abstract at the beginning, but hopefully I made
Yeah,
it.
so
Sorry about that.
No, it's
Does
okay.
that make sense though?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. At least at the end there.
Yeah.
Although the text from the book is definitely
It's a little dense,
difficult.
but I tried to water it down and put it in relation to this conversation.
But yeah, so I have two thoughts. One is like in the sense of making art, in the sense of doing that we're always healing. I like that. I like that thought, and I do think that. I do think healing is a process that's never over, that we are always healing, that we are always like regenerating ourselves and then doing in the world, and then regenerating ourselves and then doing in the world. However, I do think that like when I talk about healing, and I think when McKenna was talking about healing as well, referring to more of like the earth is sick and we're sick and we need to like get better, and so when I talk about healing in that context, I think that is an achievable goal. I think it's an achievable goal to like radically transform the way we live to a way that is more like sustainable and community based, and like kind of seeing a vision of an earth where like people live in small communities, and like there's like water and food that's accessible for all. We live in harmony with technology and nature. We are able to just sit and talk and think about philosophy and feel our emotions and kind of explore that and like have transcendental experiences, and like this across the globe, this across everywhere, like all of humanity radically transforming to be what I think is our highest kind of manifestation like of ourselves, which is kind of just not just, but cosmic gardeners. Like we are here, we're on earth, we're taking care of the earth, we're stewards to the earth, we're living in harmony with nature. We're also able to experience this like incredible place and just like love it and get value from the experience and make amazing art and technology and video games probably, and stuff like that, and just have these experiences and do and hike and live and love and laugh and be. Yeah. And so I think that state of like earth and humanity is certainly achievable. Maybe not in our lifetimes, probably not in our lifetimes, unfortunately. um, we have so far to go, but like, I think that we're our lifetimes are certainly, at least you and I, Matt, like I don't know when people are watching this in the future, but our lifetimes are certainly a tipping point. We are we are at this point of like, if we don't start making incredibly radical changes, by radical just meaning like large change, like we're gonna go extinct. Like like this this like trial of the human race will come to an end, and we'll have to like do it again in like another like hundred thousands of years. Um, yeah. So yes, I think healing can be eternal in the one sense of like we are always healing as individuals and always healing our own souls and always like depleting ourselves and then rejuvenating ourselves, like depleting ourselves through action and through like living in the world. But I also think that there can be a saved, like a healed state of the world and of like the earth and of the conscious collective.
Yeah. I think I'm going to respond by saying like definitely from this viewpoint of where we're at in like time and in history and in like the world at this moment, certainly there's like a measurable goal by which we can heal.
Right.
Um and I think what I was trying to say before is that that's always going to be there as a result of how reality works.
I see.
Like we're always going to like we can't really set this like eternal kind of like transcendent or transcendental whatever goal of like healing. There's always, because we have this goes into a little bit of Zizek's like kind of metaphysics, and he makes like an interesting argument that's kind of like what this book is about. Less than nothing. It's at least how I've been reading. I haven't finished the whole thing, but the general theme of the book seems to be reality. Reality, we don't really reach this like kind of like fixed kind of like state of eternal like recognition, eternal. No, because of the way reality fluxes and like the eternal like negativity that's present in just kind of like logic and and the world. We never reach this kind of finish point. As soon as we make progress, by virtue of making that progress dialectically, we've like set another goal for ourselves in making that progress. So yes, like we definitely can make progress. I think we'll definitely heal through art and through other means as well. And I think that should be the goal. And I think it's a great goal. And I think it goes right along with what he was saying right before we went to this about healing like the trauma and putting the gaze to rest. But equally important is to recognize that we always should be doing this and aiming to do it like higher and better. And I think we will just naturally, because naturally things are going to continue in new ways to challenge us and traumatize us. And this is kind of how reality works. But by no means is that a reason to stop trying or to stop healing. If anything, it's the opposite, kind of paradoxically, because by virtue of having like, if you are struggling like more and in new ways, it means you're continuing to grow, and it means you've really made progress from where you were in the past, and you're not being stagnant. So hopefully that kind of response made sense, and I agree with you. I just don't think I just think we should be wary of setting this like kind of healing goal as if like, okay, well, kind of like you were warning against when you start talking about McKenna,
Right.
Like once we're healed, we stop making art. Like, no, we never stop making art because we're never healed, but we're going to keep healing, and new things are going to come our way and continue to kind of like challenge the healing progress we made. And so we're going to keep making art. We're going to keep healing, keep, resuscitating our community and bringing them to higher levels, and and keep dying, kind of like we were talking about last time, and keep living more, keep resurrecting, in these kind of philosophical ways. So this is getting a little abstract, but hopefully you can see how this relates to like, the healing through the art, and how we may heal through it, but we'll never stop making it. and by healing we're going to face further problems, and we'll continue to heal from those as well. That's at least this kind of Zizekian psychoanalytic Hegelian viewpoint of art that I've been advocating for, I guess, this dialogue.
Yeah, I do want to I think I disagree a little.
Okay.
In a sense that
that's good. I feel like we haven't had too many disagreements on here, so that might be helpful.
For sure. Maybe we can make a part 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we may continue to struggle in a sense of attaining knowledge or living in higher senses, but I do think that we can reach a state that is healed in the sense where our needs as the human population are consistently met, our lives are consistently of a quality that we want, and sort of I think we can reach a state that feels utopic to the collective. I think, and I don't have a time frame for that. I don't
Yeah.
But I think it's a thing that if we continue down this more healing oriented path, that we will achieve, and that once we achieve, we will go on to experience new and higher states that may prove difficult in new ways that we're not expecting. But in the sense that we talk about sickness now, or at least that I talk about sickness now, I think that can be healed in a way that it's no longer relevant.
I totally agree with you. That wasn't a disagreement at all. So sorry if you were misunderstanding. Sorry that was hard, but essentially what Alice said is kind of what I was advocating for. And I think the importance, maybe why I agree is important to highlight. You really highlighted the temporality and acknowledged where we are, where we could be going, and why this is a
unnecessary
step because of where we are in
yes.
history, and I think that's kind of the important thing that I'm really trying to hammer home.
Yes, because where we are is this place that is sick. We are in this state that is horribly diseased, and
be sublated. This
particular disease is something that we can get rid of.
Yes, exactly.
It's like a cancer, and you can fix the cancer, and that doesn't mean that there won't be new challenges and new difficulties, but I think those difficulties may be more in dealing with being happy, kind of dealing with going through hundreds of thousands of years of trauma as a human species, and then coming to a place of oh, now we're in this more healed and happy state. I know, at least for me, when I've had it, well, maybe that's for another video, but I've had a lot of experiences where I've come to a more healed state, and my initial reaction has been oh no, I'm losing my entire identity because my identity is built around my trauma. And so now that I'm entering this more healed state, I don't have anything to ground myself with, because I've always grounded myself in the survival, I need to eat, I need to I need to sleep, I need to live, I need to just these basic survival mode. And then coming to a healed state kind of feels like a death of that person, and so it's a death of self, which ties back to our last video. But yeah, so cool that we reached an agreement. I'm glad about
hopefully
that.
It's understandable.
Yes,
if we have Zizek fans in here, you get what I'm saying. If I'm misinterpreting something, feel free to correct me.
Yeah,
I'm
and
very
also
new to psychoanalytically informed philosophy, but this is my interpretation. It seems very intuitive, very applicable, very understandable to our current situation, as well as just kind of metaphysics of Hegelian monism. So and so very abstract and very concrete, and I think they're coming together, and that's ultimately this kind of meta, to make it a little meta, this is kind of an example of the universal and particular coming together that allows spirit to live. So I think spirit's happening right now, and that's a great thing. We're really achieving our goal, and because of that, new challenges are going to be presented to us, and we'll tackle those and heal those as they come in history. And we'll be prepped because of where we are and where we have been and where we're going. So great to come to an agreement, great to talk about art, and branch off a little bit into kind of the implications of art, healing, and just talk about those a little bit. So I think we had a nice well-rounded dialogue. Thank you so much for watching and joining us.
Yes.
And please let us know if you have a request for a topic. We could talk about this stuff. We can talk about something new. I think it would help if we're a little familiar with it. So check out our other content, or even just the titles, at least, just to see what we're familiar with. But leave a comment if you're unsure, and we can have a little dialogue in the comments. Then we'll reach a conclusion, and we can talk about something that particularly interests you that you might request. So
yes. And also feel free to ask questions about this video
please
or
do.
other videos.
Always, yeah. That's just kind of like a given, but it may be important to restate. Yeah.
Yes, I think especially this video was a little like very abstract in a lot of places, and sort of like text
Sorry if
heavy.
it was too abstract.
No, I mean I'm personally happy that it is, but like
okay,
just like
wanted to make sure I
no, I think
okay.
it's nice to get into, but I also know that like I mean for myself, and I'm sure for a lot of viewers, it's like hearing some of these words is like, wait, what are you saying
you
right
have
now?
To be very like German idealist and
so if you have questions about anything,
please do. One of our goals is to make
we would love to clarify
philosophy accessible.
Yes, make these kinds of jargon heavy statements and like phrases like more accessible.
I tried to do that in the conversation and bring it to,
and
hopefully that helped.
Well,
thank you. Okay, I hope that helped. But if not, please always feel. We look to build community and build understanding. That's like our main goal, I'd say, with this channel.
Yes.
So
certainly.
at least as of now, where we're in history. So
yes.
the goal will change. But anyway, that's our goal now. So please help us move history and advance spirit by asking questions where you're confused and just getting involved. And we love to have you here. And thank you so much. We're so appreciative of all you guys do and watch and engage. So
yes, thank you so much. We love you, and goodbye.
See you in another video.
Yes.
Peace. Cool, that was good, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry if it got a little much.
No, it's okay. I think like it was balanced with more grounded.
I hope so. I really hope so. That was like my goal. I was reading it and I'm like, oh god, I need to translate this like instantly, or else it's gonna like